Good morning, all. Thank you very much again for joining us today for the forum. As most of you remember, this is the last forum of the year, as we typically don't meet in November and December because of the fact that it's our day for forum is right before the holidays, or no, it just falls in that area. So this is the last forum. We have a couple of things to give you updates from our office, but we have also presentations from our colleagues from different parts of Office of Research. First, I want to make sure that we are all on the same schedule, that we know that the 3 days between Christmas and New Year, that they are technically are not holidays. Those 3 days are office, the same as the rest of the camp, most of the rest of the campus administrative departments. They are going to be closed. So we will close. There won't be anybody on duty in sponsored programs on those 3 days between Christmas and New Year. So next week, I would send a message to the listserv to everybody to remind everybody that to meet the deadlines during that period and all the way to the beginning of the year, what schedule we have to follow for proposals. So that message would go out sometime next week, as we have done it in the past. We all have to plan for that, so we won't miss any deadlines. So that's one. The other update I want to give you is, as we are trying to fill some vacancies, we keep losing people also. Like, again, I know that the rest of the campus people are moving around. So, at the end of this week, we are losing 2 members of the office who have been here for quite a long time. One of them is Paula Noble, who has been in this office since 2000, some 20 plus years. She is joining UCLA, and we are going to miss her. I know that lots of expertise is going to leave with her. So that's one loss. The other loss we have is in the sub-award team. Another member of the office who has been here for quite a long time, Kim Smith, is also leaving to join UCLA. So as a result of that, the sub-award team, which is headed by Paula, is losing 2 people, Paula and Kim. So the sub-award process is going to get slower, and the responses are going to take longer. And hopefully, we all plan accordingly. The work is going to slow down. It's just that's the fact that we have to face. Paula also is responsible for and is a member of the negotiation team. So with Paula leaving, our negotiation team, for all practical purposes, it just doesn't have anybody. We have 1 person only in negotiation team. I am a part of it too myself, but Gina, who takes care of all of our CDA, is a member of negotiation team, and we have a couple of vacancies in there, and we haven't been able to fill them. So negotiations with the corporate entities are going to be affected too. So be patient with us as we are trying to fill the positions. We won't be able to turn the projects around as fast as we have in the past, and there is not a whole lot we can do about that. So those are the updates from sponsored programs. So I know that there are some other members of the larger part of the Office of Research that we all work with are also going to change the place they work, but I leave it to them if they want to talk about that. With that, let's start. We have a presentation from IRB. Ben from IRB, are you ready for your presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Ahmad. Let me just share my screen. And good morning, everyone. So as Ahmad alluded to, I am another one of those people who is changing their job title. So I am Associate Director for the IRB Administration here at UC Davis until the end of the week. So if you are ever interested in working for the IRB, now's the time to apply. And so let me go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to be talking about the informed consent template updates that we have. So these are not yet on our website. However, they will be available on our website by the end of the week. I want to remind everybody that best practice is always to go to our website to get forms, templates, anything like that, because they do get updated periodically, and we don't always make an announcement like this one. But we have some significant changes happening, so I wanted to go over those with you today. So the things we'll be talking about are some branding changes, 24-hour contact language changes, changes to the pregnancy language, future use language, our 21st Century Cures Act language, some language about costs, and GDPR. So, we're kind of just moving this through the way you would normally see things if you just read through the template. That doesn't necessarily mean that, the most important one is first. We've also made some formatting and language changes, just minor word changes here and there. So I'm not going over those today, but those will be reflected in the templates that are updated. So talking just a little bit about the changes we made to comply with UC Davis and UC Davis Health brand standards. So we've updated these documents to be consistent with those standards. We've removed former naming terms, UCDMC, UCDHS, University of California, Davis, University of California at Davis. These were kind of all peppered through our different templates. So we've just changed it. So now we consistently use just UC Davis when it could refer to both campuses, because we are the IRB for both campuses. And then we use UC Davis Health when it refers to just the Sacramento campus. And if there are any questions as I'm going through this stuff today, please feel free to put them in chat, and then we'll of course have time for questions at the end. So then the next change that we're making is actually in that section about, who can I contact if I have questions or I have an emergency. So if you are doing a clinical trial, we ask that you put in 24-hour contact language. We've updated this slightly. So now we indicate that the number is for the UC Davis Health operator, again, keeping with those brand standards. And we've added this line that I have highlighted here on the screen that says, someone is available to answer the operator line 24 hours a day, just so that our subjects do know that they can reach someone at that number 24 hours a day. Our members felt strongly that this was something that they wanted to have added, so we've updated our template accordingly. Now, the biggest change is actually to our section on pregnancy and contraception risk language. And here we've done 3 major updates. So the first is to remove and update our contraceptive methods. So we've removed methods like, I think, Nexplanon, which we still had on there, which are no longer actually available on the market here in the US. And then we've also included new instructions for when some methods may not be acceptable. So for example, it's a little in the weeds, but if a study advocates for using hormonal contraceptives, right, like the pill or the ring, those aren't really acceptable in the cases where maybe you have cancer patients who would be at a higher risk for blood clots. So we've added an additional instruction to help our researchers figure out what methods should be included. Another big change we've made to this section is we've revised the language to be gender neutral. Our ICF templates are mostly gender neutral already, but this was kind of the one last place where we used a lot of gendered language, and we're always striving to be more inclusive, really fulfill that Belmont principle of justice. And so we took a hard look at this. We worked with groups on campus and off campus to make sure that we really got inclusive language. And kind of the biggest changes you'll see here are that in the past, where we would have referred to a woman or women of childbearing potential, we now refer to subjects who are able to become pregnant. Similarly, when we used to talk about a man or men or people who could father a child, we talk about now subjects who are able to cause a pregnancy. That really is more respectful of the fact that not everybody identifies in the man-woman gender binary. And also is more reflective of the fact that people's gender identity may not match their reproductive potential. And then lastly, we've really clearly added language that talks about this requirement to provide sexual partners with risk information. So when a sexual partner of a subject is required to either make sure that they use a condom or take other contraceptive methods to ensure that they don't become pregnant, we've put this language in there that the subject needs to tell their sexual partners about this. And we've also made references to this contraceptive information sheet that we've been using for quite some time. We've also updated the contraception information sheet with these 3 other requirements that we've made in this section. So that's definitely by far the biggest change we've made to these templates. The next change that we've made is to our future use language. So on the left, you can see we have our old language, on the right, the new language. All the text in red on the left has been removed, and then we've added the green language on the right. So before, we used to have this opening sentence that referred to banking of the data or specimens. And that was really confusing to both a lot of our researchers and to our subjects. And so we decided to remove it. We have a separate section already in our templates that talks about banking if data or specimens will be retained after the study. And so we wanted to just take that out completely. And so our new language doesn't reference that. And then we're really just clear about, this could be used for future research. We'll de-identify it, and we're not going to ask for future consent. The next section on 21st Century Cures Act language, this will probably only be applicable to our colleagues over at the health campus. So we had worked with compliance and legal to craft the old language that you see here on the left. However, when this language got to UCOP just a few months ago, they decided that they wanted to change this last sentence. So they've taken out the last sentence in the old language and added the green language that you can see here. Now, we have been implementing this language since, I think, about November of last year. And so the way that we're going to go about implementing the new language is if you've already complied, you've already added this 21st Century Cures Act language, and you're using the old language, we're not going to have you switch. It's just all new instances where we're adding in the 21st Century Cures Act language, we're going to ask that you use the new language to be compliant with, the mandate that UCOP has given us. If it had been up to me, I wouldn't have changed it, but, the legal folks at UCOP know better than I do. So we're going to go with what they say. And then the last changes that we've made to these templates are to our cost language and our GDPR language. So the cost language, if you ever used our 2018 compliant general template, this had sort of 6 statements, and it just said, use the ones that are appropriate. And often what we found was that this led to our researchers picking many different statements, some of which were mutually exclusive, right? So it would say, there'll be no cost to you for participating. And then it would say, you or your insurance will be billed for costs of standard of care related procedures. So that was obviously confusing, not only to our research or not only to our subjects, right, but to our members as well. And so we revised this section to really give 3 options, and you just pick the one that's right for your study. So the first option is the study pays for everything, which would include any standard of care procedures that might be done as a part of the study. The second option, and probably the one that most people will use, is that the study pays only for research procedures, and then the insurance or patient pays for their standard of care procedures. And then the third option is that the study pays for nothing, and insurance or the patient pays for standard of care and research procedures. We do see all 3 of these options periodically, but as I say, the second one is really probably the one you're going to use the most. And then our GDPR language, most of this comes straight from UCOP, so we can't really change it, but we did update the UC Davis Health contact to Teresa Porter, as she's the new, at least for now, compliance officer. And with that, those are the changes we have. So I'll turn back over. Any questions from anyone? I don't see anything in chat. I'm not hearing anything. So thank you all. And, of course, feel free to put something in chat or write to us at hsirbeducation@ucdavis.edu, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
The only question I have in chat, Michael Webster is asking, is Ben leaving OR? And I think, Ben, you answered that question.
Yes, yes. So this is my last week with the Office of Research. I'll be transitioning to the IRB director role at UC San Diego.
And that's continuation of Eric Ma. Eric Ma was another IRB director here who actually reported to me while he was here as the IRB director. He left from here, he went to UCLA and San Diego, and now Eric is stealing Ben too. So Ben, you have been absolutely a great addition to IRB here. I know you came from, I mean, before that you did work for the health system for UC Davis, but no, you have contributed a lot to IRB, and thank you very much for all of your work. The type of things you just talked about are example of major improvements that you have made. Thank you for your help here.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, the next presentation we have is from IA, InnovationAccess, known to most of you as our tech transfer office. Robin is going to give us some updates. Robin is the Director of Business Development and Licensing in IRB, in IA. Go ahead, Robin.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share slides. Okay, I don't know if that's shared. Can you see that? Okay. Yes, great. All right, yeah, some updates from InnovationAccess. As you know, it's the tech transfer group under the Department of Innovation and Technology Commercialization, which also has a sister organization, Venture Catalyst, that supports our startups. We have a new website that's being launched, an updated website. There's lots of information for faculty and staff and students and industry and entrepreneurs and all. And this is what the website address, itc.ucdavis.edu. This is the front page of it. You'll see this drop-down menus under all of these. You can get lots of information, and it has an electronic portal to submit invention disclosures. So this here, submit an ORY. We're going to change that to submit invention disclosure. They can click on that and go through and fill out an electronic form to submit an invention disclosure electronically. They can also do it on their cell phone. It's compatible with a cell phone. They can request an MTA, a CDA, a data use agreement, plant test agreements through request and agreement. They can get information out in startups, available technologies, etc. So we encourage you to check out the site. If you have any suggestions for updates, let us know. It's still going to have some work being done, but it's ready for launch. Also, as part of our update, we want to let people know that we're experiencing a severe staffing shortage. This is from people leaving, retiring, on leave, etc. We're down a lot of people. So we will not be able to accommodate any last minute or rush filings. Sometimes we get PIs calling us up late on our Friday afternoon. They're giving a talk the next day and thought maybe, we should protect this. And we do what's called a rush filing. We cannot support that at this time. And we also can't do rush agreements, MTAs, CDAs, or licenses, etc. And this is going to last a few months. We have a couple of emergency contract hires are coming to fill in for a while. But again, this is going to be for a while now. We want to also remind you about visiting researchers. They need to have a visitor agreement in place if they're coming from another institution or a company to work in somebody's lab. And they have to sign a patent acknowledgement such that if they invent something, it gets assigned to the University of California. If they invent something while they're here working in our labs, they have to sign a patent acknowledgement. And that's standard procedure. If our researchers go someplace else, they'll sign a patent acknowledgement at that other institution. We do have a special patent agreement for corporate research visitors. There's always problems with corporate research visitors from corporations or industry that come to us and they're already obligated to their company and they can't sign one for here. So we have a special patent agreement for corporate visitors. That's put in place by RPAC. And so please reach out to us if you have a visitor on campus, and we could walk you through putting a visitor agreement or a patent acknowledgement in place. We want to point out that grants are getting a bit sneaky on their IP provisions. They're very difficult to spot sometimes. They're not always using words like intellectual property, IP, or inventions. So just it could be hidden somewhere else in the contract and under a different section. So we're asking you to please read the grants well, or request for proposals, and just know that by submitting a grant, you or the PI may be agreeing to IP provisions that we may not or cannot honor. So that's been a challenge for us. And one of the ones is I want to bring up is the Department of Energy grants in particular. The Department of Energy in June 6th of this year issued a Declaration of Exceptional Circumstances, a DEC. The Department of Energy is a federal funding and falls under legislation called the Bayh-Dole Act. The Bayh-Dole Act was put in place in 1980, and it allowed universities to take title to inventions and then license them out so the public can benefit from all this great federally funded work. And before that, it was the government owned everything that was invented with federal funding. So this is great legislation, and it has, built the U.S. economy and started lots of companies and has been very beneficial. But the DOE feels that it didn't go far enough. One of the requirements of the Bayh-Dole Act is that any licensed technology has to be substantially manufactured in the US. Well, the DOE felt that the companies are getting around this, they're not manufacturing in the US, or they're not using, if they are manufacturing in the US, they're not using US suppliers. So they wanted to address this and try to build the US economy and all that. So these Declaration of Exceptional Circumstances were issued to more effectively promote US manufacturing and technologies developed under federally funded or DOE funded agreements. However, they're going about it all the wrong way. They've put in place very restrictive US manufacturing requirements. So at the time the grant is submitted, we're supposed to submit, or the PI is supposed to submit, a US manufacturing plan, which obligates us to license it to companies that will manufacture in the US and use US suppliers. And this is almost impossible, given the global economy. The applicant, or UC Davis, not only do we have to submit a plan, but we have to ensure compliance. We have to ensure that all of our licensees from DOE funded inventions comply with the US manufacturing plan, which is something we cannot do. We do compliance for licenses as far as, are they paying their royalties? Have they met the diligence milestones? Have they paid us the money they're supposed to pay us? But we can't go into their companies and see who their suppliers are. If we can't license the invention under those terms, and we've already patented the invention and put our money into getting a patent application, then we have to turn the patent rights over to the DOE. We have to give them our patent. So we put $40,000 into it to get a patent. We can't license it. Here, it's yours. And that's actually against UC policy. We can't transfer title of our patents. If the invention is licensed non-exclusively, so non-exclusively is not just to one company, but let's say we license it to 3 companies, A, B, and C. If one company goes outside the terms of the agreement, has a supply chain issue and goes to China to get the parts that it needs, or Mexico, all of the licenses get revoked. Not just the one that was going outside the bounds of the agreement, but A, B, and C all lose their licenses, which this makes this a in a possible situation to license to anyone. Company A is not going to license if company C, because their license is dependent on the behavior of other companies. So, and if the license is revoked from one of these companies going outside the bounds of the agreement, not only do we have to give the DOE the license and terminate all of our licenses, but we have to pay back the grant on top of that, which is, again, a non-tenable provision. We cannot abide by these provisions. Also, if we license exclusively to a company, one company, and the company has a change of control, like startup companies, that's their game plan. They're going to license the technology and get acquired. However, and we do this all the time, we just do a change of name, the license goes to the acquirer, no problem. However, in this DOE-funded inventions, if there's a merger or an acquisition of the company that's licensing the invention, the license is then suspended until it can be approved by the Department of Energy. I'm sorry. So this again is no one's going to acquire a company that has a technology they want and then have the license suspended until it's approved by a government agency, which may take months. And finally, the Department of Energy, federal institutes usually retain rights for research. They retain rights to any technology that's invented using the funding for research purposes. The DOE is retaining rights for any and all purposes, and which includes commercial purposes. So, you know, you can imagine that we go and patent a technology and we go to license it, and the company that is going to license it's going to look at these provisions and say, hey, you know, you've got a government entity that's reserving commercial rights and could compete with me. Why would I license that? So because of this, because of the Declaration of Exceptional Circumstances, let me just, so I'll get to my big announcement in a second. This Declaration of Exceptional Circumstances applies to any inventions with joint appointments or joint inventors at any national lab that's funded with DOE funding. So this covers Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, JBEI, Oak Ridge, and others. It's being applied retrospectively at the national lab level. They're amending their agreements, their grants at, for example, National Berkeley Laboratory. So these provisions will affect funding that is already in place. So if you have PIs that have grants or are working with people from LBNL or these other institutions, their inventions will be affected by the DEC. Any joint inventions that have any funding by the Department of Energy will be affected by the DEC, and this includes DARPA and ARPA grants as well. It also includes National Science Foundation grants that have any Department of Energy funding. And any grant going forward will have a statement in it that says DEC applies. It's one little statement and it has a big consequence. I'm going to ask you to please look out for that statement, DEC applies. It has big effects because InnovationAccess will not elect title on any inventions discovered or created with Department of Energy funding until further notice. We will not patent anything created with DOE funding because we cannot license it under these conditions. We're asking that any grants that are funded from the DOE or have indicate that the Declaration of Emergency Circumstances applies, for the PI and anyone working on that grant sign an informed participation letter stating that any inventions created or developed under this funding will not be commercialized by UC Davis. So they will know in advance that anything they create or discover, and the way that works is we have to elect title to inventions that have national funding, federal funding. We're going to not elect title. So all rights will go back to the Department of Energy. Now, what that also means is that our PIs will publish on their work, which is, what they should do and what the Department of Energy wants them to do. And as soon as that happens, all of the technology developed by Department of Energy grants will be in the public domain. So they've really cut off their nose to spite their face here. This is completely in line with what's happening at UC Santa Barbara and UCLA. Those two universities, campuses, have decided they will not elect title to anything funded with DOE money. And there's starting to be some discussion on a listserv, Director Technology Transfer listservs, and Autumn, Association of University Tech Transfer Managers, about this. And hopefully it'll create momentum to push back on this with some force. But on the other hand, we are looking to negotiate a set of terms for us that will allow us to license it. We have an intellectual property officer, Eugene Sisman, who has volunteered to take this on and move it forward. He's a JD, and he thinks there might be an opportunity to negotiate, but it depends on, working with the government. Trying to negotiate with the government is very, very challenging. So we'll see how long this lasts. We'll provide you an update in 2022 and let you know if we had any movement on this, if we can get a set of terms that we can live with, that that complies with UC policy and could be favorable to licensing any of these technologies. I'll just stop there for a moment if there's any questions on this. Yes. This is being recorded, so you can have access to the recording, but I can send you the slide regarding the DOE, and I can send out the declaration of exceptional circumstances as well.
So Robin, maybe we can, if you want, we can post the slides using our listserv too, so campus would see it. Okay. Thank you for this presentation. It has been going on for some time, and finally they made it effective. For all practical purposes, they are walking away from Bayh-Dole that, as you said, has been extremely beneficial to development of intellectual property funded by federal government in US since Bayh-Dole went into effect in 1980. It is unfortunate where they are going. This crazy. Is all having to do with the phobia that was generated here a couple of years ago working with other countries. And hopefully people who know that these things are detrimental would change these things, and we go back to where we were. But meanwhile, as you said, this is the consequence.
Unfortunately, and they're very explicit about they don't want these technologies to go to China, and they actually call out China in some of these documents. But putting such restrictive provisions on the license agreements isn't the way to build the U.S. economy. And because the universities are not going to file patents on this, elect title to them, they're going to go in the public domain, and China will have full access to them. So
exactly,
it's completely ridiculous. The people that wrote this had no connection to reality, I think.
Right.
I just want to also, then I'll go to my next slide, have some good news for you. Is there an outreach campaign to faculty that regularly work with DOE? Yes, there's going to be. This is something that actually we have our IP managers meeting twice yearly, and this was just brought to our attention this past week. So this is one attempt to get it out, and we will be socializing this more. We're trying to identify PIs that have DOE grant funding and then reach out to them personally and let them know. And then we will try to kind of market this and let people make people aware of these provisions as well. Thank you for that question. Oops.
Okay.
Oops. Now, some more good news. I'll end it with some good news. We have some new marketing tools for the IP that we do patent and license. We're partnering with outside companies to try to increase our market reach. One of the companies is First Ignite. This is a boutique marketing firm I'll talk about in a second. And the other company is InPart. The First Ignite we're using for select technologies that we think have high potential, and I'm not with them for 1 or 2 technologies a month. We've got a great database of company contacts, and they're able to set up very high-level meetings with the C-level or the vice president or president of production or external innovation, some high-level valuable contacts. These haven't led to new licenses yet, but they have led to talks for research funding and collaboration. So these have been a valuable tool for us so far. We're also just starting to our subscription to InPart. And this will post all of our technologies for companies to look at, and they've got some, cool, they format it very well for us. But I also wanted to let you know that they have a Discover section, which is over here. If you click on Discover, you see a list of funding opportunities or collaboration opportunities. So here, for example, is a next generation regulation. You're looking for collaborators or technologies. They might, this Ultragenics is looking for research programs in any rare disease or orphan disease, and they're looking to collaborate. They're actually looking to sponsor research. So these are, we have unlimited seats. Anyone could sign up. Anyone with UC Davis email can sign up and go into InPart and look at these look at all the technologies, but also look at a lot of the funding opportunities that are available. We just ask that you let us know if your PI is looking to submit a technology for one of these. And we'll make sure it's protected first. We just want to make sure it's either patent protected or evaluated for protection before they submit it. But that's it, I think. Okay. Also, your enclosure, because of our challenging work situation, we're going to be closed the last 2 weeks of the year, and that's from December 20th to January 4th. So the new disclosures and agreements requests can be submitted to InnovationAccess up until December 20th. And then anything submitted afterwards through the portals or to our office will be attended to after January 4th. So again, if someone has giving a presentation sometime in that time, please let us know beforehand and we can discuss protecting it with them, because our office will be closed. So please, any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or you can send them to innovationaccess@ucdavis.edu.
Robin, I have a question.
Sure.
Before you highlighted the DOE, you talked about how some contracts have IP provisions hidden in them. Are there any other that are becoming standardized that we should be aware of, like DOE?
I've seen them sort of one-off from foundations, but we haven't seen, this is from the US government, and I haven't seen anything to this magnitude now.
Okay, thanks.
In sponsored programs, when we are negotiating agreements, we look for all of those, but Robin is right. It's not enough to just look at the section which says intellectual property or IP or whatever. And I mean, definitely in sponsored programs looks at every single word in documents that we sign, especially if they are contracts, and with the corporations, all of those get heavily negotiated so that hopefully we won't miss any. One other thing I wanted to point out in relation to what Robin talked about, the DEC, and the DOE. On the issue that Robin properly mentioned, that as a result of all of what she discussed, the end result is that publication would come out, and entities that government or DOE doesn't want to see having access to whatever it is, they are going to get access to it. So that means that, and there's already some speculations, that chances are that some of these awards would come in with restriction on publication. And guess what? If it gets to that point, we would not be able to accept the award. It's against University of California policy to accept that publication of university would be subject to approval of outside entities. And from time to time, government tries to do that. We negotiate them out. But if somebody who is informed in DOE and knows what's going to happen as a result of what they are doing would decide to put publication restriction in the award, university would not be able to accept the award. So we won't even get to the point that there would be a publication. So that's another major issue that we would be all dealing with. So the PIs have to be prepared for that. It's, yeah, we have been there in some situations and it's not a pretty situation.
No, it's very unfortunate. This is the first time that we've decided not to elect title or protect any interventions from a certain funding source.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Robin. I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. So let's go to Kelly Gilmore on the proposal side. Your updates from here, please.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So one thing proposals is really intent on doing is being as efficient as possible and getting proposals in as quickly as possible. So to that end, I wanted to share a few really helpful tips that we've come up with that will help us expedite proposal submissions going forward. The first one is if you are requesting a resubmission, when you submit your request through Cayuse, please provide us with the original Cayuse proposal number as a note in the IPF. That will help us identify the resubmission more quickly and review the previous submission as well in our review. The second, if a subrecipient form or letter is needed, please let us know in advance, also just as a note in Cayuse on the IPF, so we can provide the correct approval documentation at one time. Sometimes we don't find out until after we've provided a letter that maybe isn't needed. So we're doing double the work on those approvals. So anything you can do to let us know in advance would be appreciated. And then the third and final note that we have is that when you're doing your budget justification, when you're addressing your indirect cost rates, we really recommend using the term facilities and administrative costs, also known as F&As, instead of indirect costs, which is going to help better align with the federal terminology. The federal agencies are now using facilities and administrative costs as opposed to indirect costs. And those are my updates / requests for this month. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Okay, I'm not seeing anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Grace, on the award side.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I have 2 items this morning. One is a reminder. So this is our last research forum for the year, but I know that a lot of grants and contracts end at the end of December. So if you need no-cost extensions, let us know early. Okay, don't wait until the middle of December to let us know. As soon as you are told by the PI that they want an extension, please send those requests to us. Also, carry forward requests that might be relevant at the end of the year, we want those early as well. Okay, so any award modifications, start asking your PIs now. Okay, the second item, it has to do with other federal regulations that are being handed down. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, and this has to do with the COVID-19 workplace safety guidance as it applies to federal contracts. So there's really 2 items here that you might want to review. I know I mentioned this in our last forum, but here I'm giving you guys the websites if you want to look at it yourself. And there's really 2 things that work in tandem. There's the executive order and then the guidance implementing the executive order. So the Safer Federal Workforce Task Force issued the guidance on September 24th, and this implements President Biden's executive order 14042 that was issued on September 9th. So both of those things kind of work together, all right? So if you want to, I include the websites there below. So there's saferfederalworkforce.gov and then the White House one. Okay, so what the guidance requires is that the covered employees, these are the employees that will be working on the federal contracts. They must be fully vaccinated unless entitled to an accommodation, and the covered employees and site visitors must follow the CDC guidance for masking and physical distancing. So appropriate masks in common areas and shared workspaces. And also for those who are not fully vaccinated, wear a mask in crowded outdoor settings or during outdoor activities. Now I want to say that for the work being done at UC Davis, the university policies and guidance covers the breadth of the federal requirements. The issue is we will have to flow these terms down to our subcontractors as well. Okay, and speaking of that, the key dates are the order's effective date is November 14th, at which point the clause will begin to appear in new contracts. So right now they're not absolutely appearing yet. They are trickling in though. But after November 14th, this will appear in federal contracts. And between October 15th and November 14th, the period we are in now, the agencies must include the clause in solicitations and are encouraged to include the clause in contracts awarded during this time, but are not required to do so unless the solicitation was issued on or after October 15th. So new solicitations coming out now will include this, and the contracts may or may not, but they definitely will after November 14th. Okay, and here are the relevant sections, which is section 15 of the guidance. So the guidance defines contracts covered by the order as new contracts, new contract-like instruments, new solicitations for contracts, extensions or renewals of existing contracts, or the exercise of an option to implement a contract. And then the if is important. It applies to procurement contracts for services or construction. It also applies to contracts that cover the services under the Service Contract Act. It also covers contracts for concessions or for entering into federal or in connection with federal property. So for a lot of our federal service contracts, this will be in the new contracts or the extensions of them. And then here's the last page I'm going to cover today. This order shall not apply to grants. That's really important. Okay, so grants are not part of this. It's federal contracts. And the guidance specifically excludes grants under Section 5B. Contracts with Indian tribes, any contracts in which the amount is lower than the simplified acquisition threshold, that's at $250,000, or for employees that are performing their work outside of the United States, or subcontracts solely for the provision of products, so basically a procurement contract. Okay, so it applies to federal contracts, not grants. But if you have a federal contract that's more than $250,000, we're going to flow these down to our subcontractors. For the work being done at UC Davis, it's not more onerous than the guidance already in place by the university. So if you meet the university requirements, you'll meet the federal requirements as well. But we'll have to, you might have some tough conversations with subcontractors, maybe, but that's just something to keep in mind. All right, I'll send these to Perry, who can send out the slide deck. And the Safer Workforce, the guidance website is really good because it answers a lot of FAQs about the federal contracts and COVID mandate. Thank you. Oh, any questions for awards? Okay.
Thank you, Grace. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see any questions coming in. Okay, if there are no questions, still at the end, we would have time if no other questions would come in. Let's go to contracts and grants accounting. Mario, I believe, is here to give us some updates.
Yes, thanks, Aman. Good morning, everyone. Just a few updates and reminders from contracts and grants accounting. We hadn't really discussed the holiday calendar, but since it's a topic, look for some communication to come out in the next week regarding the coverage that we will have. Last year, since the pandemic, in the past, we've done a soft close. Last year we had pretty much full coverage. So we anticipate it will be along those lines. But again, look for an email to come out from our office next week sometime. Organizationally, I know I believe last research forum, we announced that Stephanie Mata has taken my old position, the supervisor of the cash team. So I wanted to make sure that that was announced. If I couldn't remember if it was announced last month or not, but so Stephanie is taking on all the day-to-day operations for the cash team, as well as being a part of the Aggie Enterprise Initiative with Francisco as a subject matter expert. Other than that, I think staffing wise, knock on wood, we're doing pretty well. We have a few backfills, but we're looking good going into year end. I wanted to also talk about another initiative that's going on, which is the single audit. We've been working on that since the middle of August, and appreciate everyone's help that we've reached out to, and that's wrapping up. We hope to be putting the final work on that in the coming next few weeks. So that's been a big initiative going on with the group as well. A reminder for the federal fiscal 20 effort reporting season, the fiscal 20, those reports are due in on Friday for certification. As of last night, we had about 75% of those have been completed. So still a little bit to go, but doing pretty well on those. To borrow Ben's comment of best practice, to any information, questions, to go to our website, and I'll post the link here in the chat in a second. So as far as fiscal 21 federal year-end reports, we look for those to be in the system in mid-November, and hopefully we'll be back on track with our effort reporting cycle. Other than that, we really working through as we get into the calendar year end, and those are pretty much the updates that I have for today. Any questions? I don't see any questions. Like I said, I will post the link to our ERS website if you have any questions. It also has the information for the help desk, which is the best resource if you have any questions submitting reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Well, I think that's the end of the presentations we had planned for today. So time for questions from anybody, or sharing information with colleagues, or whatever else you want to do. Again, remember this, we are not meeting November and December. Our next meeting is going to be in January. So is there anything else we want to talk about here?
I just want to say my farewell to everybody. It's been a pleasure working here at the university for the last almost 21 years. And it's been a pleasure working directly underneath you, Ahmad. Oh, I'm getting, and it was a huge decision for me. And I will miss you guys all. And that's all I have to say, because I don't want to cry in front of everybody. So I thank you for being a part of my life for the last 21 years. And I will miss you guys.
Thank you, Paula. You have been definitely a very important member of this office. So who knows, maybe you will come back. Other people have left and come back. So we'll see.
More than once.
Let's see. Lots of, I guess there are no questions. Congratulations to Paula and best luck. And any other announcement, talks,
Ahmed, I
everybody.
received a private question asking about the status of the COI office. I believe they're talking about.
There are some vacancies there, and we are working on the positions. Some of them are open, some of them are under, at this stage that we are going forward with interviews. But that's another thing that that office members of the office have chosen to go elsewhere. So meanwhile, most of the issues of COI are new. Associate Vice Chancellor is taking care of, and we are providing support. So there's nothing really major going on there because we do have a committee for review of COI, a conflict of interest, and business is as usual. So the PIs have to turn in their disclosures, and we will take care of them. So again, business as usual. Okay, Denise, go ahead.
Yes, if I may, this is Denise. I just want to echo what Ahmad is saying, that I personally am trying to handle those and move them forward. So there will be delays. I'm trying to get through them as quickly as possible. You can certainly encourage people to reach out to me directly if they have questions or concerns about the timeline, but we are working with Ahmad's help and John Tupin's help to kind of bring me up to speed so that we can make this efficient while we try to fill the vacancies. But just to clarify, right now the research, compliance, and integrity team consists of me and Linda Tripp, who is working part-time on export controls. So we are a very small team doing our best, and we appreciate your ongoing patience.
Thank you, Denise. And let's see, some more chats are coming in. I am not sure what, there's a question, it says, can we move agreements forward if not on the COI training report? I am not sure what the question is. Issues of conflict of interest have to be cleared before agreements go forward. But do you want the person who's asking, do they want to explain more or talk? Oh, you are saying if the PI has not completed COI training. Let's case by case. If something comes up, if there's an agreement that needs to move forward, please contact me and we will see what we can do. If the training has not gone forward, not because of the fact that the PI didn't have time to do it, and if it is because of that training was not available, we would help them. But just come to me with specific agreement, and we will see what we can do to help. Okay. Anything else? I guess there's nothing else is coming in. So maybe, let's see, there are 175 people right now here. And there's nothing else coming in. So I guess we can stop the meeting. Going once. Okay, then have a good next 2 months. Again, if anything comes up that we need to help, please let us know. Meanwhile, as you heard it from our office, you heard it from Tech Transfer, and to some extent, the IRB, things are going to take longer time because we don't have enough people. And that's the reality we are facing. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, there's some other thing. Okay. See you in January.